Let's get corrupted. What is up, everybody? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. And guys, if you noticed, I stopped saying "What's up, YouTube" because we are now on all podcasting platforms. As of the last two episodes, I've posted all of them, but they're all on the podcasting platform, so you can listen everywhere now. So, what's up, everyone? All my audio listeners, thank you for listening. What is up, guys? I hope you're doing well. Today is episode number 24 of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. And, guys, honestly, I just wanted to have a little Sunday night conversation with you all, interact with the chat a little bit, see if you guys have any questions about anything. Just wanted to chime in. But I hope everyone is doing super well. As usual, just get through some business here. All my social medias are down here below. Go follow me on Instagram. That's where pretty much everything goes. Guys, I'm sorry. It's been a busy week, and that's why I kind of threw this episode together last minute. Life's hitting me in the ass. Just a lot of stuff going on. Work. I'm in grad school, so it's the end of the semester there. The animals, a lot of stuff going on around the house. We redid the garage. I told you guys had the snakes in here. The snakes are actually out of here and back in the garage now, but still temporary podcast studio. So it is what it is. But we're back. Hopefully some more normalcy with the collection and stuff now. And we're going to talk all about what's going on in the collection tonight and just, how the breeding season's going and what's going on, what we're breeding and all that stuff. Guys, as usual, morph market also, I only have a couple animals left, a few ball pythons, so if that is something of interest, feel free to hit that up. I have some eggs hatching in a month, some more Texas rats. As usual, as you guys know, those are my true love of the hobby. So 6 nice eggs cooking, and those should be out in about a month. Also, guys, support USARK, support USARK Florida. These are the organizations that fight for our rights to keep reptiles, whether it's on a statewide or federal level. You can afford the cheapest USARK memberships if you can afford to feed a collection of, even a few animals. Like, it's very inexpensive to join up on that. So I highly suggest doing it if you want to protect your rights to keep your animals in your respective state and our country. Also, guys, I always endorse this. Blake's Exotic Feeders for quail. I've been loving to diversify my reptiles or my colubrids diet. Kind of alternating between mice and quail for them. I think it's super healthy, and I think it's really impactful to making them some good, healthy animals. Been really liking that. So go hit them up directly at Blake's Exotic Feeders on Instagram. You can hit me up and I will send you the price list if you don't want to make a weird interaction. But if you hit them up, let them know that Joe from Meteoric Serpent sent you and he'll hook it up. DM him so you can get hooked up on the shipping. If you go straight to his website, it's going to charge like a flat fee that's very high. So yeah. Also, last but not least, in the description below, the first link there, I did start the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. If that's something you guys are interested in supporting me, I take all my time out of my week. I try to schedule these episodes, and really it's all about you guys. It's definitely about me. I love putting these episodes out and learning from all my guests, but definitely takes a lot of time out. So that's why I'm sorry I scrambled this week for this episode, but it is what it is. We do have a guest next week, one that I'm very excited about, so you guys have to stay tuned for that. But yeah, guys, that's about it. So if you see today, I'm wearing a very cool t-shirt. This one is from the website of Fulvius Apparel. You should go check that out. What you should also check out is that Mr. Fulvius Apparel, Palmetto Coast Exotics, Justin Smith is here with me tonight. What's up, man?
Hello.
How you been?
Busy.
Yeah.
Just I think everyone, for whatever reason, this time of year always seems to just be a little chaotic, be it in the collection or general life. And has not been an exception for me. So
Yeah. It's that springtime where everything's kicking in high gear.
yeah.
Everything's eating a lot, breeding, so everything's on kind of like high alert
Hmm.
in that regard. Probably the biggest time of the year where you're spending just like figuring out what's going on with everything. You're putting a lot of brain power into it with pairings and like collecting eggs and stuff like that and keeping track of everything. So yeah, super busy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's full steam ahead at work. It's festival season here, so we have a bunch of small like seafood related festivals and stuff, and we
Okay.
do shirts for a lot of those, and it just gets super chaotic at work. So fortunately, podcasting has become kind of a nice break from a lot of that stuff during the week.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
not have to think about it or worry about it. And
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this is like my Sunday break away from everything. It's like I have this time, I'm committed to it. So this is when I get to kind of blow
yeah,
off steam and just let the rest of life kind of go, right?
that's right.
Yeah. So what's been going on with you? What's up with your collection? I saw you got a clutch today. That's awesome.
Yeah. So oddly enough, it was yesterday that she actually dropped it. I was like, man, I need to turn on the incubator this weekend and get everything up and running and ready to go, because that female's gonna, that first female's gonna drop any day now. And I just happened to open the tub yesterday morning when I was just doing some water changes and stuff, and I was like, oh, she's laying. And so it's like good timing, because I went and turned on my incubator then, and then after, by the time she was done, it was ready to go and rocking and rolling. So uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't have any sphagnum moss, because I usually will incubate corn eggs or Baird's eggs on spag. And
Oh, you
this,
do.
this clutch, I'm trying it on. I had some Eco Earth that I dug out of my
Okay.
closet or something. I have an absolute nightmare of a closet in my snake room. That's just a catch-all for things I just refuse to throw away. And I had a brick of that stuff and expanded it and used that in the lay box. And then I was like, well, let me just go ahead and try it with the eggs. I mean, corn eggs are going to hatch on it regardless. That's
Yeah. So I was gonna say, is there any I don't know, like scientific reason why you kind of go easier on them? Is it just because they're like so easy to hatch and they're like super hardy eggs, or like
yeah.
yeah,
I don't consider them to be sensitive at all. They seem to be able to hatch in just about any condition or media, whatever you have them on, and
right.
it's just never been an issue for me. I was gonna
Okay.
try perlite this year, because I've never used perlite.
So I use perlite, which is why I was gonna say that I like perlite. Um I always reference back to it. Back when I was at the pet store job, we used vermiculite, which
I
like it's
so
a different
messy.
material.
I hate it. It's
Yes.
so
Yeah,
messy.
it's
It's like
way more
glitter.
messy than perlite. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this little glitter mess all over, and the pieces are a lot finer. Like it's almost like fish flakes. That's what I would
Yeah.
almost compare it to. Fish food flakes. Whereas perlite are almost very fine, like it's like fine aquarium gravel.
Mhm.
That's what I would
But it's like
relate
super
that to.
lightweight, right? Like it weighs like
Yeah.
next to nothing.
Especially when it's dry. It's like
Yeah.
the bag, it's like it's super dry. And then once it's wet, it obviously absorbs all that water and kind of
Mhm.
holds it and uh gets a lot heavier. But um I've been using perlite now for all my stuff. I like it. I haven't had a problem with it.
Mhm.
But what I was kind of saying was back at that pet store job, it's like the same ratio of water to material, and that's where I kind of learned, along with like watching old snake bites videos back in the day. Like I know how to do it by hands. Like I don't use any measurement. I kind of just pour water
I feel.
in a yeah, I literally take the perlite, I dump some water and I stir it around and I grab it. I'm like, okay, if there's excess water, I just take it slowly and dump it a bit, and I'm just like, okay, that's good, and then put the eggs in there and call it a day.
Yeah, I've got some floating around here, and like I said, I hate it. It's just so messy. Like, it's as a medium, like for the job that it's has to do, it works great. Like, I don't have any issues with it, and
Yeah.
how it works with the eggs and stuff. But it's so messy. I hate, especially if it's dry. Like it,
Right.
I hate it. It's just too much. So I've been using aquatic plant soil for a few years now.
Oh, really?
It's really similar to the perlite in terms of like it's a clay kind of material.
Which one? Like like is it one of those brand? I forget what is it literally called live sand? I don't even
Maybe
know.
I
That
don't.
was the one I used to remember
So my mom was
because we
big
did
into.
aquatics at that store too. It wasn't
Yeah,
just reptiles.
my mom had a small pond, so she had this bucket of APS that she just using, and so I took it
Okay,
using it, and I like it because you can tell when it's dry because it's a completely different color. So like when it's dry, it's a nice dark brick red. Like when
gotcha.
it's a very light color. Like you can tell when it's time to
Yup.
pour some more into it. Um, but I don't. I had a hard time finding it for a while, like in terms of the exact same thing that I was using.
Okay.
Um, I'm looking on Google right now. Let me see if I can.
No, that's interesting though. I haven't I don't know. I was just like always had drilled in my head like perlite, perlite. It works. Whatever. I've used it. It's always worked. I've never had an egg like mold because it's too wet. Again, just because I kind of know that ratio by
Mhm.
hand. Um, and yeah, so I've always liked it. I've been seeing lately some people use like the cocoa husk, which is what I use as a substrate. Some people use that as an incubation
Like
medium,
the
which is
actual chip,
interesting.
like
Yeah,
the
like the
bigger
big chunks.
really?
Yeah. I guess they just keep that moist, which I wondered isn't that more of a mold attractant, I guess I'll call it. But I guess not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't the spag has worked really well because it's naturally, you know, antimicrobial. Uh,
Okay.
so it's naturally resistant to that kind of stuff. Um, that worked fine for bear dye and corn eggs last year. I just put a little bit in there. Sort of the same thing. You feel out the moisture level and how much you have going on in there by squeezing it out, and um, that worked well. I didn't have any issues with that. What I did was sort of a combination. So when I bred the green cat snakes, the Boiga cyanea,
Yep.
I had the APS. I had light diffuser over that, and then I took a clump of spag and put it on one end of the egg
Okay.
box, and then had the eggs on the other end. And that seemed to really almost work as like the same way a heat sink would work in a incubator with like full water bottles to help just
Gotcha.
level things out. If something
Yep.
happens, it's there. That seemed to work really well in the regard for humidity. Um, and I hatched a couple clutches of those that way. But for the stuff that I don't worry about as much, that's just not nearly as sensitive. It's usually spag. But um,
Yeah.
if I get the Jansenii eggs again this year, I want to try perlite. I think. I don't know. There's a couple different routes I'm thinking about going. So
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that for sure.
it's tough. There's too many
Yeah, you just
different options, and
not
not knowing
quite
what's going
sure.
to work. Is kind of the
Yeah.
part. Because
Yeah.
last year I got the egg. I got one good egg out of three or four. At least two or three of them were good, and then there was one that was definitely a dud. But only one of them ended up really kind of going the distance, and ended up uh, waiting 45 to 150 days because that's typically the incubation time for those. For whatever reason, it's like
Right.
crazy long.
Yep.
And
Yep.
at like day 150, I was like, okay, something would have happened by now. I'm going to cut it and see what's going on. And it ended up being very late term, dead in the egg. So hopefully, I don't
Right.
know exactly what that was about. I'm thinking that maybe it was just that baby just it wasn't meant to be, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was necessarily anything I was doing wrong. Um, but it's like every year with those trying to figure out, okay, like what did I do last year that didn't work? Like with the eggs, I'm at a point where I know when to expect eggs from that pair. Like they're
Yep.
cohabbed full time. Like they do that thing. First week of June is typically when she lays. Like consistently the
Okay.
last 2 years when she is laid, it has been the first week of June, like almost a year to
Nice.
the day, like very odd. And so it's been the eggs that have been kind of the tough part. And that's historically from what I've read and talking to some people that have successfully bred those, uh, incubation is really where it gets kind of tough. So
Yeah.
there's a couple routes I'm tempted to go. I was told, and from what I read, don't let those eggs get too wet because they get so full that some of them will literally almost look like they're about to burst.
Okay.
That outer part of the shell will really start to stretch and look rough.
Well, I was just listening to the King Snake Chronicles
Mhm.
episode that you guys, well, not you, but
I
Chris
was
and
there.
Harry.
I was in the
Oh, you
background
were?
the
Okay.
whole time. Yeah.
Well, that Chris and Harry, I finally finished it. It took me like 3 days of on and off listening, but that was one thing John had mentioned, especially like why he's noticed some, and it happened to be, for those who don't know, it's like montane king snakes, so ones that live in drier climates as is. Um and he had mentioned with his first few clutches, he was getting like half of them dead in the egg.
Yeah.
And he kind of attributed that to them being too moist so that the egg expanded to a point where they could not slice out of it.
Hmm.
It didn't have a chance to dimple in, kind of like some other snake eggs will. And that's when the snake has the best opportunity to make that slit with their egg tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's tough, especially with something like Gonyosoma, where there's really hasn't been a ton of people that have bred
Yeah,
them
of
in the
course.
States, and there's not a lot of information out there as far as like how to do it and what people have done repeatedly to be successful with it.
Right.
So, like with the Jansenii, we have the Gonyosoma.org website, which is, it's a bunch of information that was written down by Freight Friedis, however long ago. Now Daniel Schwint is the one who owns that and keeps that available.
Yeah.
Uh, but like you read that and it's like these are sensitive to like high moisture, like you don't want to get them too wet. But then at the same
Okay.
time, when I had mine, like I was starting to think that maybe they weren't humid enough. Like there was something unrelated, but like in chondros, for example, my buddy Luke Meyer, he had the same issue I did the first year he bred chondros, which was like the eggs were getting super dehydrated very early on. So they were denting in way sooner than they should have been. He had the same result that I did with that, but what he did was he ended up putting them in vermiculite, like burying them halfway, the traditional way. And he said those
Yep.
eggs came back no problem. He's like, they were perfect at that point. So
Interesting.
I'm starting to wonder if it's a similar scenario with these Jansenii eggs that they need to be buried. Maybe the media just needs to be a little drier than what the standard would be in terms of that kind of 1-to-1 ratio that you would do with vermiculite.
Right.
So it's just now it's a question of like perlite might be the right answer. Maybe the eco earth stuff might be the right answer. It kind of, it's hard to, you don't know
Yeah.
when you don't have any information. It's
Of
really hard
course.
to
Yeah, it
figure
makes it
out. Like,
much harder. And also with their, with such a long incubation time, that just gives it that much more room for error within that 100 something days,
yeah, yeah, it
And
was
not that you're making an error, it's just the point that like
no, yeah, for
you
sure.
might have it go all the way to term, but like you just didn't know where the mess up
Yeah,
was, so it just kept going and it's just like, oh man.
yeah, and it was brutal because it was like okay, like 130 days came by. It was like still looking good. Like candled it, looks solid, no issues. Day 140, same thing, looks good. 145, I'm like, it's supposed to hatch any day now. It's gonna happen. Like I'm gonna come home and it's gonna be, and then I'll cry a little bit because it's like this is what I've been trying to breed these things for a couple years now.
Yeah, I know.
And after 1 to 50, I was like, okay. I talked to a couple guys, talked to Rob Stone. I think I talked to Daniel Schwint, and I was like, I'm just gonna cut it. Like something would have happened by now. Like
Yeah.
normally I'm okay if like, okay, it's supposed to hatch on day 145. I'll give it an extra 2 or 3 days maybe to pip because maybe it takes a couple extra days, whatever. But after that like 5-day mark, I was like, okay, this is something I got to check now. Like now I'm concerned, and so opened it
Well,
up. And there it
was
was.
there any like deviation on temperature from what's like said? Because I guess there's not much examples to go on, right?
No,
What kind of temperatures you going at?
I had it 80 during the day and then a drop to like 78 at night. Or maybe it was
Okay.
82 during the day and then 78 at night, but definitely in that 78 to 82 range.
Right.
because that's I pretty much the first time I did them, I did it the exact same way I did the boiga eggs, because I was like, they're occupying a similar area. Like
Gotcha.
the eggshells are equally as thick on those boiga as they are the Ganisoma eggs. Like it's unreal. Um,
Okay.
so I was like, maybe we'll just do the same thing. That seems to work fine with the Cyanea. They're both super abundant in their range, so clearly, like it's working, naturally. And
Right.
so that's the most frustrating part about the whole thing is like you see the number of Jansseni that are imported into the States, uh, be it babies or adults. And it's like those things are not hurting. Like in the wild, like the population across
Is
the Ocean
clearly
Sea
doing well.
is healthy. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
what am I missing? Because they're clearly breeding in the wild without any issues. Like they're hatching, they're reproducing. Like it's something there's something I'm missing, I think, on the incubation front in particular. I don't think it's necessarily the breeding that's the hard part. I think getting the eggs is kind of the easy part, but it's figuring out what am I missing with the media and the eggs themselves and incubation. Um,
Right.
and talking to Daniel Schwint, who has bred them multiple times in the States here, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just putting them on a shelf, man. Like he has them in a box and some spag on the shelf. And he's in, I think, Kansas.
Okay.
But it's like, um, it's just it's a like doing a single colored puzzle. Like you don't know, you just have the pieces. That's it. You don't know
Right.
what the picture is that you're trying to put together. Um, so as at this point, I'm just kind of experimenting. But each year, I seem to be getting one step closer, and it's required a lot of patience. But
Yeah.
I think
I
we're
gotcha.
slowly getting there. I think this year maybe, next year maybe
Hopefully.
we're might have it cracked. So I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully. I wanted to go to this comment. I don't know if you've seen this, Justin. People have been using Orbeez as an
I have not.
incubation medium. Yeah, it's really interesting because it's essentially doing the exact same job as perlite and vermiculite, or I should say more like hatchite, because it's already hatchite is basically perlite that's already like in a water crystal. So
Mhm.
it comes moisturized. And that's essentially what inflated Orbeez are. You get
Right.
them, you run the water and they just expand. And then you kind of just let the eggs sit on there. Or I guess sit above it, maybe with like a light diffuser or something. Uh but that's doing the same job. And I've heard of people hatching ball pythons on Orbeez, but I definitely don't think that would work for probably every species
Yeah, I mean,
just because of the humidity factor.
it
Because like then
seems
you
a
start
lot
talking about desert stuff and
seems a lot like it's the water crystals, like that same material.
yep.
I'm assuming I've never like I've seen Orbeez, I've never actually like played like had them in my hand or anything like that, so I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what they're all about. But um, I mean, if it works, it works. Like, kind of get to a point where try it, see what happens. It's like
Yeah.
if everything else isn't working, what do you got to lose? With balls in particular, I don't. It's not as big of an issue because those seem to be kind of like corns, and the fact that like the eggs are really, really sturdy.
Yeah. For
But
sure.
hey, weirder things have worked for people, so
Yeah.
go for it.
And by the way, chat, I want this to be a very like interactive kind of show. So if you guys have questions, just drop stuff in the chat and we're just kind of gonna be chatting away. Um Yeah, so what is on the I'll let you go first and then I'll kind of go. What's on the horizon for you this season with breeding in general? Like what are the species? I know you have mentioned that you're going to slim the corn production a bit um just because you had so many last year if I remember correctly. But like
Yeah.
what's all that looking like across the collection?
So this year, the clutch I just got yesterday is a Coral Ghost Aztec female to a Anery Motley male with I don't know what heads he has. He was just a nice corn that I came across on like Craigslist or something.
Okay.
He was really pretty, and the people were they were parting with him for cheap. So I was like, let me give it a shot. It's a good looking snake. Um, so I paired him to her. So I have no idea really what's going to come out of that. I don't think she has any hets except for maybe stripe. I have to double check
Okay.
with Chris. Chris has a habit of giving me females at Daytona and saying, "Here, breed this next year," and kind of disappearing into the mist again. So that's the clutch I got yesterday. That was 12 eggs.
Nice.
The one clutch in particular that is kind of a joint project between me and Chris is the pied blood reds. So he
Okay.
gave me the female that he has. I have a hypo male that produced, a bunch of the babies last year. She just had her prelay shed yesterday, so she should be dropping here soon. And then I have my Ladies Island corns, the original female that has produced all the offspring that I've had for the last couple years in that project. One of her original F1s is back to her this year.
Very
So
cool.
I don't know if anything's happening yet with that. The male is pretty young, so he may not make the magic happen, but we'll see.
I when it comes to these North American rats, I think it's very, very hit or miss on the males. When it comes to that age, like last year, I grew up that snake from Kevin like a mofo. That scaleless anery Texas rat. He
Yeah.
was small when I got him, and I was pounding him with food, and I was like, hope he did the job. I never saw any visual locks, but sure enough, he got the job done. Now this year, I've been pairing him and haven't seen a thing until a couple days ago when I put him back with the scaleless leucistic, so repeat pairing, because she hasn't given me eggs and she looks huge, so I'm just like confused. And I caught them locked, and I'm like, you asshole, because I've had him paired to a triple het girl, that I'm really excited about. Like, I want to produce my own scaleless aneries. I've had him paired and haven't seen any activity. They've basically been cohabbing for a while. And so now that I saw him lock with this other female, I'm going to hopefully switch him back and see if that turns him on a bit. But I don't know.
Yeah, I've got some males that I know for sure will get the job done because they've proven themselves over the last couple of years. But those newer, like younger males are always a little,
Yeah.
like,
And I'm sorry, I
"What are you
completely
doing?"
got off track. Oh, my bad. What were you saying?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. I got off track. I meant to say like that male from last year was, I think he was 2 and maybe 1 year, and technically like on the higher end, going on 2 years.
Yeah.
And he did the job. So I don't know. I usually don't like pushing things like that, but I was like, I really want this clutch. So guess it worked out. Significant size difference, but if he does it, he does it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like, what do you got to lose? It's not like you're not putting king snakes together where you got to worry
Yeah,
about
exactly.
taking down a male. Like,
Yeah.
give it a shot, see what
Yeah.
happens. So there's those 3 corn pairings, and then I'm really gunning for rhinos again this year because that female has a good bit more size on her this round, so I think her clutch is going to be bigger. So I've been upping food with them. The male's been refusing food, so that's a good sign. They've
Nice.
both been more active lately, so I think we're on track with those. But I really want to produce those again because now I have a much better idea as far as what to expect. Last year was the first clutch I had of those.
Okay.
So this year I feel way more prepared as far as knowing what's going to happen and what to expect with getting those babies established and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then condors at the end of the year, hopefully. I feel like I've been saying that for the last like 5 years. But I've got like 5-year-old females, 6-year-old females that aren't very big, but I'm like, every time I try them, come fall and winter, the male's always super interested in giving it his all, but the females just don't seem to be receptive to it. So
Gotcha.
I think it's just a matter of a little more time. So probably in the next
Okay.
couple months, I'll start putting males in there. And I don't know. Maybe I'm lazy. I like to cohab stuff until I see signs of eggs and some stuff being gravid. Like I'll leave a male corn in with a female until I see that she
Right.
is gravid, and then I'll
Right.
pull him, separate him to feed, all that good stuff. But they're gonna know the cycle of the female way better than I will, especially with the
Yeah.
rhinos in particular. Like Matt Most has said, keep the male in with the female because that window, I guess, is fairly small, and you don't. It sounds like it's not always going to be the same time every year either. Like it could be a little earlier or a little later, maybe. So keeping that male in there so that when she is ready to go, he's already there and doing the job. That's what I did
Right.
last year, and it worked out fine. They locked up and she dropped eggs, and they've been cohab still since, like, they're together full time.
Yeah.
They do great together.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I definitely think I feel that that is a little bit species dependent on like how to situate cohab or like reintroductions because again because I haven't seen any visual locks on this female until literally a couple days ago. I'm thinking she wasn't ready and maybe she's just going a little bit later than she did last year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so maybe when I put that male in, that was like, okay, game on. And she's ready to go. Um, which again, I find interesting as well because I've had him cohabbed with this other female and haven't seen a thing, and then he goes in and immediately locks another female.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, so reintroducing to a new female did something. Just shifting him 3 tubs in the rack did something
Yeah.
behaviorally. So yeah, I think that's interesting. But yeah, like you said, when there's like a shorter time period, I'm sure that cohabitation works a bit better.
Because I've heard a similar sentiment with pine snakes, like southern or Florida's. Because Jake tried pairing his, I think, last year, and I think he waited too long because I was talking to Ron Allen, I think, at Daytona last year, and he was like, as soon as you pull them out of cooling, like, get a meal or two in them and then put them together. He's like, because that window comes and goes really fast with those.
Right.
And so I don't, Jake and I not thinking about that being a thing with Pituophis in particular, at least that species. I relayed that to him, and I think this year he's trying that where he's get a meal in them real quick and then start getting them together and
Yeah.
feed them up to that. And, Kevin asked what I incubated the rhino eggs at, and those I believe I kept at 82, like the same thing, 82 with the nighttime drop to 78. The nighttime drop thing, I don't know if it makes a difference. It just seems like something that's a little more natural to what they'd experience.
Yeah.
But also being sort of more of a montane-ish species, 80 is probably where I'd keep them at, but nothing above 82 or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I wanted. Oh, speaking of rhinos, I wanted to tell a little story because I don't know if I mentioned it on here, but so I got that female rhino, that sub-adult. She's been doing great, smashing food, all that. Super strong appetite. Then I got this hatchling male in, and he ate the first week. He went into shed for how long their shed cycles
Dude, it
are. It's
takes forever. It's so weird.
forever.
I've never had a
So
species that takes that long for the whole, like, start to finish cycle of
yeah.
sheds to happen. It's strange.
So goes through a shed cycle and just shut off food. Wouldn't take a thing. I was trying all different things. I even resorted to trying fish. Like
Mhm.
I went and bought rosy reds, nothing, whatever. I was going to hit you up, but I didn't want to be that guy that's like, I'm having a problem with someone else's animal. So let me bother you about it. So I just went and messaged him. I was like, hey
No.
man, it's like
Never be afraid to message me. Like, that
no,
goes for
I
anybody.
know, but like
Not
I
gonna
don't
be
like
that
doing
guy.
that to people. Yeah, I don't like doing that to people. So I hit him up. I was like, "Hey man, like I know it's not something you did. Like I trust that you had the animal established. It took its first meal. I don't know what I'm doing wrong now cuz it didn't eat for like 2 months, just being completely honest. Like
Mhm.
probably about 2 months no meals. I was like, "What do I do?" And he was like, did you do this and that? And I was like, I even simplified the setup just to make it better. Like I had it in a little like kind of holding quarantine tub and it was just sitting in
Mhm.
my room at like room temperature. And I was like, this should be good for it, whatever. He was like, why don't you just try switching it up? Like go back, like put it somewhere else, like move it, just completely change everything up.
Mhm.
Sure enough, I then set it up in my little rack system gave it it still had a live pinky that it didn't eat. I put it back on cocoa substrate, gave it like a different water bowl,
Mhm.
put a little hide in there, whatever. Didn't eat overnight. I go in the room in the morning, turn these lights on, and all of a sudden I just hear squealing. I'm just like, "What?" I open the tub and he's got it in his mouth. I'm like, "You waited all night till I turned the lights on?" And sure enough, he ate it. So I'm like,
They're weird snakes,
"Okay,
dude.
okay. If you're
They're
gonna
just
eat, you're gonna eat."
yeah.
So now I'm gonna try going back to tongue feeding this time and see if he'll take it. I'm gonna try tomorrow. See if he'll take it off tongs. I'm gonna hope that does the trick, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything I learned from that clutch last year is that it's just a war of attrition. Like, you just gotta wait them out. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, you know what? And like I've seen people, especially with like ball pythons, they freak out. Again, just because I'm in that community, like they freak out so quickly on animals that aren't eating. But I kind of know and I've dealt with it where you kind of just take it easy, try all your different methods, like don't stress out. But then it got to that point where it's like, this is a small animal, it's been 2 months. I need to try something. So that's when I
right.
finally messaged him. I was like, hey, I need help. And it worked. Um,
Yeah, and I mean,
so now,
that wouldn't have been what I would think would have done it.
yeah,
Like, if you had asked me initially, I would have said, maybe put some artificial cover in there or something. Like, maybe it's just a security thing. But I have found even the babies, like fresh out of the egg, like they don't seem to be super skittish. Like, just like the adults, they seem to be pretty curious. Like, they're always out. Like,
well,
shyness
that's
has
what I was
never
gonna
been an issue.
say. Yeah, well, it was in my room, so every time I had the blinds open, like, and I was working from home and stuff, I would see that thing cruising the
Mhm.
tub all day long,
All day.
super active, and I'm like, "Okay, so this snake has energy, it's not being, like,
Mhm.
lethargic." I'm like, "It's good, it's healthy." I'm like, "I could get it back on track." So that's why I was still confident that I could get it back to eating. I was just like, I don't know what that breaking point is gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, and someone had told me, I don't know if it was Terry Burwell or someone else, but they mentioned that babies can go a surprising for such a small snake out of the egg, like they can go a surprisingly long time without food.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
But I literally just so I have 3 babies left from that clutch. And I just had, as of yesterday, the last one that has been holding out on eating mice took frozen thawed yesterday off the tongs.
Nice. Yeah, I
And
know you
those
were
those
talking
hatched
about
in
that. It was
August.
eating fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to get it switched over, like, ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, I was at first because you talk to people and they're like, people talk about fish and feeders and thiamine and whatnot, and you're
Yeah.
like paranoid about it. But I've just had got to a point where I was like, I feel like I'm stressing them more by trying other stuff, tails and whatnot. Like, if I need to get them to eat, like, I'm just gonna give them fish. And I mean, I didn't give them a lot. I gave them, I think, I'd get 2 in the water bowl,
Right.
and they demolished them like immediately. And so, like, it was sort of like the same way it was with the cyanea, where you got to it takes some time for them to just to get on board with things.
Yep.
Because there was the whole, like, well, float the pinky in the water bowl with the fish, and it's like I did that and it worked a little bit, but there was still a couple that would completely ignore that pinky and just eat the fish. Like, I think the movement has so much to do with it. Um,
Right.
but it was just a matter of just waiting it out, because I'd give them rosies, and then a couple days later, off them a frozen thawed pink, and I saw over time that they'd be more interested in those pinkies. Like, it was
Right.
never a scenting thing. Like, it was never that pinky being in the water bowl or that pinky just being around, like, didn't seem to affect anything. But just over time, I think they get to a point to where they want more than fish. They want something with a little more substance to it, and I think that's when they start switching over. And I think it's an ontogenetic thing, similar to green trees, where it's like where they occupy environmentally as babies is not exactly the same as it is for adults.
Right.
Like, they're with chondros, it's a little more dramatic because they're almost 2 completely different animals from hatchling to adult. Um, but I think with baby rhinos in particular, I think they're much more geared to be lower to the ground, closer to water, and then as they get to adults, maybe they're moving away from that a little bit and spending more time in
Right.
the trees and stuff like that. So it was just a matter of waiting, because after a while, just started taking pinkies. I didn't have to give them fish anymore. Like, I'd offer them a pink, and they
Yeah.
just slam it. It was like they had been eating
Yep.
them the entire time. So I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's just what I gotta do, is just give them fish and wait and keep offering, and that's it. Like, it's not get them on the pinkies as soon as possible like I thought it was initially. Same thing with green trees, where people are like, you gotta get them off pinkies right away. You gotta get them onto something bigger. You gotta get them eating, and it's like they'll do it on their own when they're ready. And rosies are cheap.
Yeah.
I haven't had any issues with the ones from PetSmart. Even they have the signs on mine regularly where they're like, no fish sales, everything's under quarantine. Like, I'll still get some of those rosies. They'll still sell me some, and
Okay.
like, they're not going to other fish, so I'm not really worried about that. And
Yep.
it works. I can feed a whole clutch of rhinos for $2.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like I'm gonna win that battle of waiting out.
Yep. Yeah. No, I get you. And then off the rhino topic, just because, I think I said when I started this show, I wanted to be as open and upfront with everyone as I possibly can. And I even tell the group chat this, at least I don't think I did. I unfortunately lost my second oldest snake that I had in the collection. He passed on me about a week ago. I think he was sick. He crashed very hard. Um, if my other snakes were showing issues, I'd be concerned.
Yeah.
But I think he just crashed out of nowhere. I actually don't want to say out of nowhere, because it happened last year and I thought he was going to die on me last year. And then he suddenly made a recovery, and then
Hmm.
he went through brumation and he was fine. And I'm pretty sure he's the snake that sired these eggs, which we'll find out in about a month. Then all of a sudden he refused food. He regurged and crashed, got super skinny and just withered away.
Yeah.
With like very, very quickly. I was just like, oh man. So yeah, it sent warning signs up. I've been checking all my snakes diligently, and I haven't noticed anything with anything else, and everything else is doing super well at the moment. So I'm not sure what did it. Yeah, but it
Have-
sucks. It was my second oldest animal, is what it is. It happens
It was
sometimes.
a ball.
No, it was I'm sorry, it was a Texas rat snake.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you found those to go downhill really quick as like babies if they start regurging? Like, have you noticed that
Um
at all?
I haven't had any that like just straight up died on me like that.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I don't I yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I had one in the clutch that just didn't make it through its first shed, which was really weird. Like it
Hmm.
just like couldn't really shed the right way and it just died.
Yeah.
So I just wrote that off to nature.
Yep.
But I haven't really had a hatchling that crashed hard because they're all so super well eating.
Hmm.
I've never really had one regurge on me like that. Maybe once, like maybe if you give them too big of a meal, but I don't think it's happened in my experience, and that's a very limited experience. So
Yeah, I've just noticed with baby bears in particular, uh, when they regurge, like, you really gotta build them back up slowly, because if you try to come back at them a week later with something of the same size, like, they don't do well, and it eventually, like, they just crash. They just don't do well. So I was
okay,
curious if the Texas rats, if it was a similar thing, but I've never kept Texas rats, so I don't.
right. Were they like so what was like the situation? Like they started okay, whatever, and then all of a sudden regurge and then
Yeah, I don't
crash hard?
think maybe it was just a too big of a meal as a baby. Like, overall, I think from what I've noticed, bears seem to just kinda do better with a slightly smaller meal. So, like,
Okay.
maybe you'd give an adult, uh, like a large adult mouse. I prefer to give them like a size down from that. Uh, so I don't know. I've just noticed with babies, like, if they regurge, like, you really have to, especially if they're one that's like on fuzzies or something, like, you got to start them back on like tiny pinkies and
Yeah.
very slowly work your way back up to like the normal appropriate size.
Right.
Because they'll regurge, and I've noticed after about 3 times with regurging, maybe 4, they end up just
It's
rolling. They
over.
just don't do
Yeah.
well. Yeah, and that's
Now,
I'm wondering if it's a desert species thing in particular, because I don't think they're eating large meals in the wild, especially given their range and sort of what's
yeah,
available.
perhaps not.
And then maybe just the amount of water uh, involved. Like maybe it's just too much. I don't know. It's something to think about.
When they hatch out, what's their size like? Are they comparable to corns in any
They're
way? Are they
a
a
little
bit
bigger,
bigger?
a little bigger.
Yeah,
Definitely a little heavier, like a little chunkier.
because I can say for Texas rat babies, like you're not unless you cook them super fast and you hatch out small eggs in a like under 60 days. Like that's the only way you're getting small babies. If you go slow and low, you're hatching out big
Yeah.
beefy animals that can take like I'd almost say like close to a fuzzy,
Mhm.
like a slight peach fuzz
Yeah.
pinky on its first meal. Like no problem. And I have my animals from last year. They've been on hoppers, but like they started hoppers super early. Like just how much size they put on in the short amount of time was just crazy to me. And I've always just found them to be extremely hardy animals that love to eat and they have no problem handling big meals.
What's your average clutch size with those, roughly?
You know what? Because mine's like skewed. Because in my few that I've had, like back in the day, I had like five, then like three that made it. This one was six. Last year I had um 10, then 11. So I don't know what I'm expecting this year. I'd say like 6 to 12 is a good, like a
Yeah.
solid clutch. And some people get more like well more than that. I saw some people in like the Texas Rat Facebook groups posting like, almost to 20, like
Wow.
close to 20, 16 to 18 in
Mhm.
that range. So it just depends. And what's really interesting, and I had a conversation with one of them about it, is the shape of the eggs depending how many actually get laid. So in my experience, I've always had Texas rats give me very oblong eggs, like big, rounded, oval eggs. And I've seen other people post Texas rat eggs when especially when they have big clutches that look very similar to corn snake eggs, like
They're long.
almost rounder, smaller eggs. And I'm just like, and I commented on one of them once. I'm like, dude, it always seems like me and you have completely different shaped eggs. And like, I know your animals are Texas rats. I'm like, what's the deal? And he's like, I've noticed smaller females will give less eggs, less bigger eggs. Whereas the larger females will pump out a ton of eggs and they're
Yeah.
a bit smaller.
Yeah, that
So
makes
that's
sense.
interesting.
Well, I ask about the clutch size because that's something Chris and I have talked about, is we notice like with Texas species and desert species, they tend to lay smaller clutches, but the eggs are considerably larger. So like the Baird's eggs come out a decent size bigger than corn snake eggs, but it's far less. I think the most I've hatched, like the biggest clutch I've gotten from one of my Bairds was like 8 eggs, but they were larger
Okay.
sized eggs. So we have a theory because it's the same thing with like the Janai and stuff that he has, some of the Pituophis, like smaller clutches, but the eggs are just bigger. The babies are just
Yeah.
bigger. Um, and we wonder if that's has something to do with uh the water availability in that given like Southwest Texas area in the northern Mexico. Um,
Right.
so it's just something interesting to think about. And I wonder with the Texas ones in particular, because I mean those range all the way over to like Corpus and stuff, right? Like where Chris is.
I believe so.
I'm wondering
I'm
if
not
that
I'm not
if
100% sure. You know what? I'm so lacking on INAT and knowing ranges, and it's a crime that I don't know, but yeah, I should know.
I think. Oh, I mean, I think they do. I know the Emery I do, but I'm just curious if maybe that's like an Eastern range versus Western range thing, where maybe the Westerns are more likely to lay those smaller but larger egg clutches.
Interesting.
The other way around, I don't know. It's just stuff that I think about pretty regularly. Just always
Yeah,
curious. Because it's
for
the same
sure.
with the Jansenii eggs. Like I messaged my buddy Henry Martinez, who talks to people in Indonesia all the time. And I was like, can you please ask someone that you know over there that's like out in the field? Like, where are they finding Jansenii? Where are they finding eggs? Like, what's the temperatures like? What's the humidity like? What's the medium you're finding them in? Like, are they laying them in logs? Are they laying them in tree hollows? Like, there's so much stuff in that natural history section of a lot of these species, man, that it's like it's the smallest stuff that's also happens to be the most obvious that we just don't think about, you know.
Yeah, right. 100%. Um, I'm sorry for missing. Oh, well, I didn't miss it. I've been waiting to put it up. Do you guys plan on attending Colubrid Fest? I hope to be there," said Adam.
Did they reveal where it was yet?
No, it
Okay.
hasn't been officially revealed where. I believe they are going for the last weekend of September
Yeah, it's gonna be dependent on
in
where it
terms of
is.
date.
I think they had like one of the initial places they had listed for potential states was Georgia, and I'm like, that's a horrible idea because Georgia's got the
Which I
dumbest
think,
laws.
yeah, which I think they said, okay, yeah, that's getting scratched off
Yeah.
immediately.
And then Tennessee, I think, was another one, and I don't know exactly what Tennessee's laws are, but I think they're kind of convoluted a little bit too.
Mm,
But I don't know.
yeah, I'm not really, I'm definitely curious to know where. I'd like to be there. My answer to that is I'd like to be there. Granted, there's nothing keeping me from going. Um, but yeah, so I'm excited. I know I've talked to Zach and Clint a little bit about it on here. Um, and I think once that news is officially out, we've kind of talked about it. I think I'm gonna have both Zach and Clint on, and we're gonna have I guess, a whole discussion about it. So, um,
I'm
be prepared
interested.
for that when it gets announced.
I'm interested to see sort of how that format works because when you compare it to sort of how carpet fests are done, it sounds like it's a little bit of that, but then it's also like an expo kind of and like
Yeah, so it seems to be like expo plus symposium. That would be the best way to put it. It's like one day is talks and like
yeah.
presentations, and then the other day is vendors, selling animals like it's a reptile show, but it's a colubrid only show. Very specifically, colubrids only and nothing else.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too.
Yeah.
Because that's something I've wondered as well is like if someone did a show where they're like no ball pythons, no imports, like how small would that show be? And like I don't think any promoter will ever like do that because you're not going to sell any tables that way. But just imagine like a show that doesn't have any of that. You know?
Right. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I know they mentioned on the last week that the original venue, so they had a venue picked and they were
Mhm.
like waiting on confirmation, and they said that fell through, unfortunately. So I think they're kind of back to the drawing board a bit.
Yeah, that's got to be probably one of the hardest parts about organizing something like
100%.
that. I mean, those guys that run the shows and stuff, be it Repticon or the Show Me stuff, or it can't be easy. I mean, Repticon, I think they've got their sort of home bases locked down and stuff because the Columbia shows at the same Jameel Temple, every time
Right.
they do it. It has not changed for like decades. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I always do wonder like what the behind the scenes is like with that kind of stuff in terms of like what's the insurance, like how crazy, how
Yeah.
hectic does it
I
get when you're dealing with stuff like that, and especially if you have a venomous show like Columbia, like what kind of insurance
Oh
are you gonna
yeah, that's
pay
true.
for? Yeah, man, it's wild.
Yeah, I kind of forget about that because, like, well, I think about here in Florida. I mean, there's a Repticon show literally more than every other weekend because I believe, um, like Paul vends every Repticon and he's doing 33 this year.
Yeah, it's a lot.
33 shows is a lot. So that's literally more than every other week. There's a couple where you're doing them.
Do you think they should do less?
They spread them out across the state, and Florida's a big state. So, and Florida is also a major hub for reptiles. The thing is that the shows are all the same thing. I mean, there are so many ball pythons, like there's all so many crested geckos at all these shows. I don't know if there should be less. I just wish I don't know, it's tough to say. Cuz like right now I'm pretty sure Repticon lost most of the venues that are down here in South Florida.
Really?
Yeah, there was one nearby. It's about 40 minutes south of me. It was a fairly large venue where I feel like they could have had more vendors and it could have been a bigger show. Their problem is promotion, man. And I'm sorry, I've vented the Repticons before, so I'm sorry to. I don't want to sound like I'm talking shit, but like they just don't do a good job at self promoting the show, so it's damaging.
Yeah.
Like it's up to the vendors to say, "Hey, I'm going to the show," because they make one post about it, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you see about it. So I think that's the hard part is people just don't know.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts to it. I feel like it's almost like throwing darts, at a board in the dark. Um, the Columbia show, I think, historically has always been one of the best Repticon shows in the Southeast. They do it twice a year, but I do wonder if they did it once a year, like how much better would that show be? Because I
Well, that's the
know
interest. Yeah,
a lot of people, it's like, well, I can't go to the June one. I'll just wait until November, and then there's like
yeah.
2 or 3 in Charleston every year. And it's like, I don't know. It just, if they maybe had concentrated things a little bit more, like maybe those shows would overall, in terms of like the selection and the quality of what's being offered, um, might be better. But I don't know. I haven't been to a
It's
Repticon.
also I also stand in a tough position because I'm friends with a lot of the vendors at the Repticons, and like some of those guys, like that's their full time gig, and they're hustling. Someone like Eddie, I don't know if you know who he is, Eddie Soto.
Mhm.
Like he's
I don't know him. I know of him, but
yeah, he's hustling those lizards full time.
yeah.
Like he's there at every show. So is Paul with the 3D stuff. So I mean, I would never want to say, take away those guys' streams of income either. Cause, those are two people who make killings at these shows all the
Mhm.
time. I mean, sometimes better than others, of course, but like every time I talk to Eddie, he's like, "Oh yeah, I sold off all of these whatever of that species he brought to the show." So like it's, you know,
I think that's one of the things that makes Daytona so special, is that it's a once a year thing. Like, it's not like
yeah.
Tinley, where you hear like, what is it, the October shows, like the better of the two Tinleys, or is it March?
I presume it to be October because that's when
Baby
there's all the
season.
hatchlings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like if they did Daytona twice a year, I mean, I'm sure I'd still probably go, but I also feel like it just wouldn't be as much of like an event as it is.
I think people go to Tinley both times a year is because it's in very literally such a central
Yeah.
location, and that's like literally a middle ground for so many states to like
Hmm.
come and meet together because and I'm wrong. I mean, I'm probably wrong, but like, there are some people from out of state and like, on other sides of the country that are going to both shows, but I bet like the average person is maybe going to one, and that's if that.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to one. I want to. It's just such a
Yeah, me too.
far trip. I know Jake's made the drive up to
Oh shoot.
like one of the last Northeast Carpet Fest. I don't know that he went to Tinley, but Billy Hunt has gone with Jason Hood a few times, and they
Yeah.
drive, and it's like it's a haul, man. And I
Yep.
don't know if I'd rather drive or fly, because I'm not a big fan of flying. I'll do it, but it's not my
Okay.
favorite. I also don't want to be sitting in a car for 16 hours or however long it takes to get up there.
Yeah, I feel you.
It's tough choice. But
Yeah.
you're going to Daytona this year, right?
Yes. I
Yeah.
will be going.
That is like the one show a year that I just refuse to miss.
Yeah. I genuinely, like, from what I could see and from what I hear from people, and I have not been to Tinley myself, Daytona and Tinley are easily number 1 and 2 in the country from what I could tell.
I've heard they're also very different. Like Tinley is much more like business, and Daytona is much more of like hangout
Party.
party. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, well, from hearing you guys and like even seeing myself, and I haven't been to Tinley again to experience it, but like, Daytona is that Colubrid show. There's a lot of diversity there. Like you walk over and, it's like picking a name out of a hat of what species you're gonna see at the next table over
Mhm.
at Daytona. And even at Tinley, like all these, breeders from all over, they're going to that premier show in the country. So you're going to see a lot of diversity there as well. So I think that's part of what makes it great.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the sheer volume too. Like hats off to Wayne for organizing that every year because he's an older guy, and
Yeah.
again, that's a lot of moving parts, and he's got it. I think he's got it down to a pretty good formula at this point for after doing
Seems
it for
like
so
it.
long. And it's a good venue. Like it's cool that the hotel is right there.
Yep.
It's such a fun weekend. I'm not like a social butterfly by any means, but Daytona's just that time where like the show is great. I like the show and checking everything out, but it's like I like hanging out with everybody more.
Yeah.
You know, the show is just an awesome bonus, and uh, that's the one time a year that I get to see Phil. That's the one time of the year that I
Okay.
get to see like Jeff and Gendra because they come out from Washington, and
Right.
uh, you know, a lot of people that I never get to see, but that one time a year, it's Daytona, and so that's the weekend that I refuse to miss. So
Yeah. And I'm especially more excited after, meeting all you guys and stuff and just the amount of connections I've grown. Cause, last year I went with a whole crew of ball python people, and now I have this second dimension to it. So I'm like, it's going to be a freaking party for me for sure.
yeah, so if Billy has the stuff that he had again last year and then some, man, it's tough. Like those conspics that he had, those Japanese forest.
Yeah.
It's like, God, dude, seeing those in person, it's like they're as awesome as I was expecting them to be. And I was like, what sucks is like there's going to be so many people that walk past this table and that have no idea what those are. Like you've
Well,
never heard of them, never seen them.
that's how I felt about Volanti
Mhm.
when I saw them on the table. I never thought anything about them. I always heard about them. I'm pretty sure I saw pictures on Morph Market, but when I saw those animals on the table, I was like, whoa. I went back and forth like 3 different times, and finally that last minute, um, I snagged them. I was like, I had to have them, and then I messaged Matt. I was like, "Hey, I picked up a little something from Daytona that, you might have sent down." And he was like, "Hell yeah." And he explained, like, the history of them and that locality being rare and them thinking it might be its own subspecies. I'm like, "Okay, so there's, like, a cool little piece of
Yeah,
snake history I
yeah.
have now." So that's awesome. That made it better, in my opinion, and
Mhm.
once he, like, told me all that backstory, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cooler."
Yeah, I mean, man, that's one of the things about a lot of species though that I just find super interesting is just their history in the hobby. Like rhino rats, like circa 2000, Pro Exotics was like the only person that had rhino rats.
Right.
And it was one of those things where I remember seeing them as a kid and thinking like I'm probably never going to own those cuz like no one has them. Like and I'm sure when they do become available they're going to be ungodly expensive, and like to see over time, and it's the same with rough-scaled pythons, like over time to see more people get their hands on them and reproduce them and get them into more hands from there, it's awesome. And it's just so cool that because one or two people decided to import, a certain species, and that's why we even have it in the first place,
Yep.
is super cool. And then just the natural history of a lot of it too. All the bamboo rats, like they're awesome. I want to keep
Yeah.
them. I just think my room's too warm for them. But I love them because they all look fake. Like if you showed someone a picture of that, they'd
Yeah.
probably be like, "That's
Well,
not real."
when I brought one to a Repticon, I brought my adult female just for show, and I just wanted it to be an attention grabber. That was the number one response I got was, "Oh my god, that looks fake. It looks so shiny. It
Yeah.
just looks fake." And that was what everyone kept saying, and I was like, "Yep, that's how they come. That's how they look in the wild." Pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
So,
Kevin Messenger did a like a Zoom meeting on that whole group.
oh, did he?
And I don't know if that's still available. I need to see if Matt has if that's still available somewhere. I'll have to message Kevin and ask him. But it was like something
I'd
that
like
you
to
signed
see
up
that.
for, and it talked about like all the different varieties. And then I don't remember exactly. This was a couple years ago, but Messenger, who wrote the book on Asian rat snakes,
Yep,
within the last
which
couple
I
of years,
have.
he
Yeah,
did
yeah.
a Zoom meeting just about porfs and that whole clade.
Okay.
I have to hunt that down.
It's really interesting. I've read that section over multiple times, and I'm like trying to follow the pictures, but it I don't know if I'm just not looking like deep enough, but it's still not quite clicking like, all like everything that they're showing between the ranges and the different colors and patterns,
Yeah.
especially because when they're adults, the colors for the most part mute out quite a bit. And plus, the different renaming, because there were more than 4 subspecies at one point, and they've gotten like reclassed or renamed, and some of them just taken off completely.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
The shuffle.
Yeah.
Taxonomy's fake. I'm sure of it.
I mean, yeah.
I don't understand it, man. Like science is a field, regardless of what it is, of measuring sticks and cutoffs of like separations and like this is the line that we're drawing for this. This is how we know. Like a human and a silverback gorilla are not the same. But my gripe is like when it comes to stuff, apparently it does not require a lot for people to just decide where that line is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like you're kind of implying, it's like mammals and birds seem all good, though I know nothing about the bird community. But when it comes to like fish and reptiles, that's when taxonomy is just all thrown up in arms.
There's just like it doesn't seem like there's any sort of standard operating procedure. Like because something has a black tail tip rather than a white, like all of a sudden that's enough to make it its own thing. And it's like I don't understand. Like I'll read some stuff, Natush's chondro breakdown where he included, broke it into the 4 subspecies and stuff. Like you look at the data on that, and he looked at a ton of green trees, like thousands, over 1,000. And it's like, okay, like basing off that, like I feel like that's a fair assessment because he looked at a ton.
Well,
Of
yeah, and I've heard someone like I believe it was Ryan Young say on a show, like he can look at a chondro and tell the difference. He like you could pick one out of a hat and
Yeah.
he could tell you which of the 4 it is. So, if someone like him can do that, and he's at the top of the game when it comes to pythons, but like clearly there's something that defines them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of funny when that came out. I don't think anyone was surprised in green trees. They were like, "Yeah, we kind of figured."
Yeah.
No.
I've definitely been liking some green trees.
Slippery slope, man.
I know it's a slippery slope, but I think I have a locality picked out when I get started. I think I'm gonna go locale.
Which one?
I like the Manaquaris.
Yeah.
They're nice. They look pretty. I've seen some nice ones. Some of Rue's look nice too. I think that would be number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think Beox are cool, and Beox are very common, and I know they have these dramatic color changes and whatnot. But I really like how the Manaquaris and the Arus develop and how like they finish in their final form.
Yeah.
With the green and some of the nice white highlights down the back, the stripes and whatnot. So
I just love the ones that have that like chalky blue. Like I don't. Billy Hunt has a pair of Lares that they have that just it's literally like a powder chalk blue.
Okay.
And that's just it's a look that I just love. And it's so wild how you can have some that are just different shades of green. You get your Arus that are that nice deeper green, and then you can get some that are more of almost a lime.
Right.
And the Beox are neat too, because the Beox, it's like you plug those into some of that locality stuff and some of the designer stuff in particular, and it just does some really
And the
rad stuff.
Biak wild makes it crazy.
Yeah, those in Wamena, I've noticed over the years, seem to be the real zingers in terms of like mixing things up and doing just weird stuff when you put it into things. But they're awesome. I mean, they're frankly boring as hell. But I mean, they're pretty, so they make up for it.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Going back to colubrids and our previous topic of the bamboo rats. I haven't said I don't think I've said it publicly. I picked up or I've implied it. Either way, I finally got them 1.2 proven trio of coxeye, the Thai bamboos from Matt Most. He posted them up. I was like, hey man, I want these. I was like, I'll have the money to you by this date. I'll put a deposit. He was like, you want them? They're yours. Just pay me in full whenever. I was like, okay. He was like, you're good. I got you. And I was like, hey, I'll pay by Zelle if that's okay. I know you had problems with like payments and stuff. He's
Yeah,
like, I
PayPal,
trust. He was like, nah, dude, I trust you. You're good. I'm like,
yeah.
thank God.
PayPal.
I guess I have enough. Yeah, I have enough animals from Matt that I got the pass.
PayPal it seems like they almost don't want people to use them. Like as the years go by, they just get dumber and dumber.
Well, it's the problem that like we're using PayPal for animal sales.
Yeah.
Like that's the main problem. Is like all of that can be prevented. Like I think Zelle and Cash App are the two best things. And Venmo, it's the same shit. Like all that is all good nowadays because that's an instant money transfer and it's not like recallable.
Right.
You can't dispute a Zelle because that's going straight from account to account, like bank account to bank account. So I prefer those. I actually do have a Square set up, and I've been prepared to take. Like I have myself prepared to take credit card payments.
Yeah.
But whenever someone has inquired, I say, hey, I can take payment this way. And like I'm waiting for the refusal, like, oh, you don't take credit cards. And then I'll say, okay, fine. But yeah, I definitely prefer the instant money transfer.
I've noticed just PayPal like does absolutely nothing for the sellers. Like every time I've seen issues with PayPal, it was the buyer called BS and did like a chargeback or something, and PayPal just went okay and did nothing for the seller. Like absolutely nothing. Like just left them high and dry and was like, seller gets it. And it's like you can dispute all you want, but they aren't going to do anything about it.
So I also think it has to do with the fact, and I could be wrong, I believe PayPal has a policy that you are not supposed to transact live animals via PayPal. I could be wrong,
but I don't understand.
But I believe that's a thing. Because that's what people use to their, as a seller, use to their defense is like, I sold them an animal, they have the animal, and they just took my money. And then they'll tell you, well, you're not supposed to be selling animals via PayPal.
But it's like, would you do that for someone that ripped someone off on like a $10,000 car?
Listen, I'm not disputing your point. I'm just saying.
It's just wild.
I actually just had a PayPal transaction for an international sale. And the lady sent it to me, friends and family. Oh no, she sent it to me, goods and services by accident, and that got me really worried. But she got the animals, left me good reviews on Morph Market, and it's good. She sent me pictures that they were all good. I'm like, and I checked with the exporter. I'm like, hey, is this person legit? Because like,
I remember
she sent it to me by accident.
Yeah.
So she said, I was like, she sent it to me this way by accident. I'm like, have you guys dealt with this person? Are they good for it? And they were like, Yeah, on a couple occasions, like, we use PayPal to transact, never have had an issue, never once, so I was like, "Okay, that's enough for me." Um,
How was the whole process with that? Because I've only exported to Canada, and that was not
I
nearly as
shipped
complicated as I
I
thought it would be.
shipped to California, and that was the end of the road for me on my end. Um, I hate to sound like this. Of course, I care about my animals, but like technically speaking, once my animals made it into the hands of the exporter, my responsibility and my liability was over.
Yeah,
Unless, of course, I sent sick animals, which obviously I didn't. But um, yeah,
because that was the most nerve-wracking part for me when I sent to Canada was just the lack of communication. I mean, exporters, like, they're dealing with multiple shipments, so I don't expect them to
yeah,
check on everything, but I was, like,
yeah.
not
So I
knowing
had
the
to,
process, I was like, "Is my stuff like, did it make it to you okay?" And they're like, "We don't open the box." I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay." And so it was, a solid 3 days before it got
Oh
to
wait, with the exporter, they didn't open the box.
No, no.
So these people, I checked with them. I was like, "Hey," and I also I had to use this big ass box I had because I couldn't find a small box. That's when our garage was in disarray. I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
look, I'm super sorry about the packaging. Like, I had to rush and put this together quickly. I was running late coming home from work and whatnot. I was like, because like I got the message and I had to ship it out that night, so I had to rush and like get it all together. I was not prepared. Um, so I sent it. They said, "No, it's all good. We take them out. We make sure they have water." Because from what I could tell, the person received them on Wednesday. So my assumption is that they got sent out Monday and didn't get to
yeah,
them until Wednesday. So I think they held it for the weekend. Like I sent it on
mhm,
Wednesday. It got to Cali on Thursday and then held for the weekend
yeah.
and then sent.
Yeah, that always seemed like such a complicated process, but then shipping to Canada, that really wasn't anything super stressful. Like I said, it was just sort of the lack of communication and not knowing if the animals are okay. But again, it's one of
Yeah,
those
I
things where it's like
wasn't
once they have it, like how can it possibly fall on me? If they
right.
get those animals, how
Exactly.
do they know if those animals died in transit when they got to the exporter? How do they know if they weren't, like, I didn't ship them dead? Like they have no way of knowing that. So there's just such
Yeah,
a large gap there.
of course. And I was again I was rushing, so I didn't even label my I didn't label my containers the way I wanted to, like with the animal and their genetics. Like I kind of just threw them in the box, like got them
Mhm.
packed up, and I like just sent them with the appropriate paperwork I was supposed to say, which just labeled the animals and the species and the quantity. Um, and yeah, I didn't hear anything, and I wasn't thinking anything of it, and then all of a sudden on like Wednesday I think it was this past week, I got the notification popped that I got a review. I was like, "Oh." So I checked it and it was super positive. So then I messaged her. I was like, "Hey, I saw the review. I'm assuming everything got there." And she just sent back 3 pictures of each one of them eating. And
Awesome.
she was like, "They took it so fast, whatever. They were totally unfazed by the travel." I was like, "That's the best
Perfect.
news I could have
Yep.
gotten."
Yep. That was a big worry of mine. Like when I sold the only male rhino of that clutch, I sold it to Matt Morris. And it had been eating
Okay.
great for me. It had a couple meals in it, like, it was rocking and rolling. I was like, "Watch me send this thing," and it stops eating. So I messaged Matt, like, the day after it got to him, and I was like, "How's it doing?" He sent me a picture of it eating. I was like, "Perfect.
Nice.
Crisis averted." Because I was like,
Yeah.
I know it's gonna happen. Like, it's gonna be eating fantastic every single week for me, and as soon as I send it somewhere else, it's just gonna stop.
It's so funny how some of these animals literally give 0 fucks about travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, none. You get them, they'll feed that day or the next day, and then some can be a pain in the I really haven't dealt with many pain in the asses, um, but yeah, I know some animals could be.
Yeah, I can't think of any issues I've had either, like, receiving something that just didn't eat. Because I don't know, I'm of the opinion, Like if I get something new, I'm usually going to offer it food like next day because I want to like get it, feed it some food, give it some water, and then just ignore it for, a week or
Right.
two. Like just leave it alone. So get something in it and then come back to it and check on it, later.
Yeah, it depends. For me, it depends on the animal. Usually I feed it the next feeding day. Like the next feeding day that's going on with the rest of the collection is like,
Mhm.
okay, you get something too. And it's like, hopefully you settled in, adjusted nice, and let's see if you take this. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Sean asked if I was
um,
pairing up the persimmon this season. So I was planning to, and then after attempting, and then Matt saying no, hold off a year, they're gonna go next year. So
yeah. And, speaking of that, like those cocks I got in, Matt said they're pretty much it's a plug and play type of
yeah,
situation. So he said like feed them up a few meals in about a month or two, you're gonna start pairing them, and you're gonna
he's the
get eggs. And I was
he's the
like,
only person
okay,
I would buy any of that stuff from, man. Like just knowing how much of that has been crossed into other stuff.
yeah,
Like Matt's got me so paranoid about that. Where if I ever do take the plunge into those, like there's him and maybe like two other people that I'd get that stuff from because I know that it'd
well,
be shit.
literally all of my porfs are from Matt, and my original female is from Carol Huddleston.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so my OG female is from her, and everything after that is from Matt.
she doesn't get enough
Um,
credit, man. She produces just some absolutely stellar stuff. Like her corns are
yeah,
out of this freaking world.
for sure.
And we managed to get her on Corn Stars a
Yeah,
couple times.
I listened to that episode.
And I don't like it's just she's one of those people that she just produces really good stuff, but you're not gonna see or hear about her a whole lot. Like you'll see her stuff on Morph Market, but she just kind of
Yep.
stays in the shadows a little bit. And so it was really cool to be able to pick her brain about some of the stuff that she's done over the years with
Yeah.
horns and whatnot. And she does produce some really awesome stuff.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. When I was looking around, I was just trying to find anything that was available. And I think at the time she had two females, and I was like, I'm gonna take my plunge. I'm like, this seems like the best intro to Asian rat snakes, and that's when it began.
Are you planning to get into anything else as far as Asian stuff, like any of the Lafay or?
So,
I want
dude,
Russian.
the
I
mandarins are
want
so
Russian
nice.
so bad. I've wanted Russian for a long time.
I have such a problem is because I have all you guys on my show that all tempt me with more and more species, and it's like,
Yep.
oh, what about mandarin rat snakes? And what about Japanese rat snakes? And then I have people on like last week with like John, and I've had Kevin Barron on, and it's like, I want bird eaters, and it's like, ah, I just so tempted by so much. And now I'm like kind of looking at Cal Kings. I'm like, Cal Kings are cool. I kind of miss those. Like I hatched those out at the pet shop. Like I always love hatching out those little babies, and they were always so feisty and such good baby snakes.
Mhm.
Like it was just fun to hatch them. I'm like, should I do that again? Just like I'm taking myself down a deep dark
It's
rabbit
tough, dude.
hole. I need to produce Texas rats and cockeye this year, and I have ball pythons on the way as well. I have one female that's like very very gravid. Hopefully I get a clutch out of her soon. But the cockeye, yeah, I'm super super excited. Like I cannot wait to produce those.
Are yours all
Plus,
fairly similar in terms of like handling them? Are they all pretty flighty?
so I would say, and I talked about this with Clint a couple weeks ago. They are very cage defensive. Getting them out, they're very easily startled.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you can open it, they're sitting there, and then the second you touch them, they want to flip on you.
Mhm.
But sometimes you just go in there really smooth and you're able to grab them and they're just like whatever. When I when I took out that male for that picture I sent in the group chat, he lit me up.
Really?
He latched onto me for a good like second or two, and I was like bleeding pretty good. But he's been calm since then.
Yeah, it's
The
just
females were good too.
that group is just bizarre because like you look at them and you're like, those can't possibly be like bitey or anything like that. And most of the people I've talked to that have had them, they're not like bitey in the sort of the traditional sense. They're just kind of neurotic.
Yeah, and as babies, they're like their feeding response, man, when they're pissed and they're just being like defensive. Cause like sometimes it's like I could feed it on a tongue, and then sometimes it's like, okay, just drop it because it'll just S up and just keep hitting it and just like get the hell away from me, please. And then it's like, okay, drop it, and then it'll eat into it right away.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
like, all right.
that's how the male persimmon is, man. Like he'll take a few swings at it and then he'll just decide to dart and take off. And
Yeah.
I just at this point I just drop it and he'll figure it out, you know.
Yeah. Adam was asking, do you guys think Russians would do well in a heated room like 76 degrees? Honestly, I have no idea about Russians, but I would assume yes.
I think they would. Yeah, they seem really hardy. That's just such a cool species, man. And like I held one at Daytona because Billy had one on his table. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but I was surprised at how keeled they were.
Oh yeah.
You see pictures and you kind of expect them to be sort of like a traditional rat snake, like a corn or something that's just like very glossy and
right
and stuff. And you get them and they're actually really keeled a lot. Like,
okay,
it's weird. I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
But that's been a species on my wish list for a very long time. And eventually I'd like, again, it's another thing where it's like I just want a pair. I don't want to go too crazy. Like, just do the Noah's Ark thing, just a pair of this, pair of that.
Well, that's where I struggle with. It's like I want a mandarin rat snake, but it's like, how do I get one and not get a pair? But like, Matt's got the Xanthics posted, and for anyone who's interested in something that Matt has, he's doing like a weekend special on everything. All his prices are stupid low. Like he cut a lot off, and I was really surprised by it. But if you're interested in anything he has, go check it out. He marked down that Xanthic Mandarin that he has posted. And I was just like, do I spend more money? And I was just like, I can't do it. And I will say I spent a pretty penny on those cockeye.
I believe it.
Like, no, you don't see adult proven breeders. Like no one's selling those.
I very rarely see adults, period. Like everything that I see available typically on Morph Market seems to be like hatchlings and yearlings.
And I didn't even negotiate with him. I was like, hey, I remember when we talked a few months ago, like you said you were putting them up for a high price. Like I will pay it. I'm like, and I hate for it to be about money as well, but with the way they produce, it'll come back. Obviously, I'm not gonna hold every cockeye because they are very similar looking, but I really want to produce them, but it'll come back. So I'm not mad about it. Plus, I get to have that experience this year as opposed to waiting another possibly year and a half. That does a lot for me. So being able to offer them at shows, no one in Florida has porfs on their table.
Right.
Absolutely no one. So that's going to be amazing. The amount of people that are going to walk by and just look at the bright orange snake with the racing stripes. Like, again, I've been, colubrid corruption. That's what it's about. Is like no one's got cool colubrids. I mean, people do, but like no one's really showing them off here. So I'm really excited to do that.
That's a group too that it's surprising that they are naturally the color and patterns they are, because it just doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't add up,
Yeah, you would think they wouldn't, right? Because you have snakes like, I mean, like you take a Japanese rat snake, for example, it starts off gray and then it turns into a green snake. And even with their brightness, but like they're in the forest, if they're in leaves and stuff, like they're still camouflaging pretty well. And then you have stuff like the porfs and the mandarins, and it's like, how are you existing in the wild with these bright ass colors?
Like you're literally asking to be eaten.
Unless everything thinks you're venomous.
I mean, if there was some sort of mimicry connection there with any of the the Bungaris or Calliophis, it would make complete sense to me. I'd believe it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Sean said just leave the Russian ambient. That's probably what I would do too. I mean, that's what I do with the rhinos, and that ambient room temperature, especially in the middle of the day when it warms up, they do great. They do fine. So
I was gonna say, I believe I've heard multiple people say that, you keep a Russian like a North American rat, and like they're pretty solid. Your standard North American, I should say. Yes. Yeah, and stalking the listings that Matt has, he has one posted that stays very small. I don't know if he has it, but maybe it's sold. But he has a locality that he says stays between 3 and 4 feet. But I think the general locality size is like 5 to 6. Most of them get in the range of 5 to 6 feet. They're very long snakes. They definitely don't get thick.
yeah. Yeah, they're odd. Need to talk to Matt about some of those conspics eventually.
Yeah, he posted them breeding today.
I know. I was like, damn it.
They're coming.
Yeah. How many feet pics do I have to send to get me some of those bad boys?
I need to convince. He's just super busy, and I know.
I don't know how he does it, dude.
I know. I have from what I hear, and then taking care of his collection. It's just like I have no idea. I really hope I could get him on here at some point. I think he would be very much willing to. It's just a matter of the time working. Yeah. Perhaps I'll have to do a pre-recorded with him.
He's a hard man to pin down.
Yeah. I was happy you guys got him on. What was that, like a few weeks, almost a month ago?
Yeah. That was. I had to butter him up because I was like, "Look, man, it's our 200th episode, and we want you." I was like, "Give him the sad eyes," and it worked. So
nice.
But he's one of those guys, man. I could talk to him forever.
Yeah, we've never like spoken on the phone or anything. Only through text, but like me being good friends with, or even being friendly with Kevin Sheehan is I think where I get, brownie points with him is because me and Kevin work like the Texas Rats together.
Yeah, man, like him and Rob Stone, they're just such wealths of information. It's just when they're talking, I'm listening. It's
for sure.
Definitely drop everything and pay attention, kind of thing. So
yeah. Even people like, being able to have Zach and Clint on here is like, I didn't think when I messaged them like they would even pay it much mind, but then they said they've checked out the show before, and I was just like, that's awesome in itself. So
yeah. We need to do another episode with Zach soon. It's been a while.
Yeah. So I guess this will be exclusive for whoever listens an hour and a half deep. A couple CCR episodes ago, Zach said to suggest some of like the panels that people want to see at Colubrid Fest. I think I said that we should do a huge live podcast with me, THN, and CCR. I think we should just have just a full-blown live podcast and just see where that goes. And Zach says, I was like, I don't know if that's, a bad idea. He was like, no, I kind of like it. I'll take it into consideration. I was like, okay.
It'd be awesome if they could get Kevin Messenger, but I mean, he pretty much lives in China full time at this point. And he just got back over there not that long ago because with COVID and stuff, he happened to be stateside, and so he wasn't able to go back to China for a long time. And he's another one, man. I really enjoyed picking his brain. He's one of the reasons that I've become so interested in China as like a herping destination.
Right.
I feel like that's a severely overlooked region. Everyone wants to do Australia and all that stuff, and that's cool too. But man, like China,
it's just like, where do you go though? There, like, I mean, I'm sure that you know where to go, but there's so much land and there's so much.
There's so many
much
options.
wilderness. like you look at a map of China, like you actually pull up some of these provinces and you literally just see trees. Like
Yeah.
you pull up a map view and it's just trees for hundreds of miles. And it's just like, what do you take a pin and drop it somewhere and
Right.
go, yeah, let's go here.
Yeah. This is where I'm gonna be, guys. If you don't hear from me, send somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like just rhino. I want to see rhinos in the wild. Um, it would be cool to see Mangshans in the wild too, but it sounds like that's a kind of a tall ask because they protect those things as much as they do pandas.
Okay.
But like seeing the different Elafe species, so like Diones and Bimaculata, and
Right.
the David eye would be really cool because that's something we talked about with Matt on that 200th episode of
Right.
Snakes
Yep.
and Stogies. Like, um, that picture that they had of the on the cover of Messenger's book of that. I don't remember what species it was. Some sort of rat snake on the Great Wall, and you just see it
Yeah.
going for miles. It's just so cool. And Vietnam would be a cool one too, like North Vietnam. I was looking up eco tours to Tam Dao National Park a couple weeks ago. Like it was like 1 a.m. after a show, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to Vietnam and I'm gonna see rhinos. I'm like looking through options for
Yeah,
eco
because the
tours.
thing is a lot of those species, like in reading Messenger's book, like a lot of their ranges span over into
Yeah,
some of the other countries over
yeah,
there. So you will find those localities. And even like they're called the Mandarin rat snakes, but like they have a Vietnamese
yeah.
locality if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it'd just be cool, man. And I mean, again, like there's a lot of places that people think of first for herps and stuff. And Africa, there's a handful of countries that I'd love to go there, but Australia is a big one for a lot of people, and that'd be cool. I'd
Yeah.
want to see chondros. If I was going to Australia, I want to go to Cape York. I want to go on the peninsula
Okay.
there and the Iron Range and stuff. But like for me, top of the list is Western Ghats in India, and then China, and then Vietnam.
Nice.
And then I'd like to get into Costa Rica at some point. That's a little bit more realistic as far as like going. I want
Okay.
to see dart frogs in the wild.
Nice.
So.
One conversation you had with Matt, which I think was like super impactful, that like I took a lot of stock from it, was where you guys talked about, how they like Matt and how he shares some of his projects with Stan Grumbeck, and like how they have some of these super rare species. And it's like when I think in my head of like the impact I want to leave on the reptile hobby, and maybe I'll never get to this point, is like I want to have a rare species that's like no one else really works it, no one else really has it, but like I'm one of those lone rangers that's like preserving it in
Yeah.
captivity. The thing is, it's just a matter of, it's most likely gonna be wild caught animals, and you're probably gonna have to go through a lot of trial and error to somehow make it work. You're doing it with the Jansenii, because like just not a lot of people are working them in captivity, at least. You see all these ones posted, and I had a conversation in a group chat I'm in, like, you see those melanistic ones, and it's just like, yeah, but do you know what you're dealing with? Because like they're all wild caught
Yeah. How many of
imports.
those are still alive is usually
Like they're all wild caught imports. You're gonna deal with a freaking slew of parasites and worms and all that shit. Like you don't know. You might.
Oh, it's
Very
almost
good chance you
guaranteed.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are you prepared to handle that? Or can
But
you
I think
prevent it from?
it's awesome. It's good to have sort of the stuff that's just less stressful and more. I won't say more enjoyable, but just more of like a cruise control kind of thing, like the corn snakes and the bears that really
Oh
don't
yeah,
require a
100%.
lot of thought. But then balancing that with the stuff that does require a lot of
Yes.
attention, and it requires a lot of digging for information, and it requires a lot of time and paying attention to the animals themselves. So I like having that sort of dichotomy of
I
and
agree.
both of those.
And that's almost one of the reasons why I want like king snakes. I'm like, oh, this is just gonna be like a fun snake that's like
Yeah,
super easy to breed,
yeah.
and it's like I enjoy them. And then I have some of the other stuff, but I don't know. We'll see how the collection grows
Like
and
corns are
stuff.
where I get the morph thing out of
Yep.
that's I have the handful of morphs and corns I really like, and like I'm focused on those, but I still like the natural appeal of the Jansenii and the Conicus sandboas that I got recently and that kind of stuff. So I like being able to get my fix. Those guys that manage to keep one species and one species only, I don't know how they do it, because I know if I got rid of everything and just kept the rhinos, like, I would be okay with that. But I know within like 3 to 6 months I'd be jonesing for something else. Like, I gotta change it up. It's just
100%.
I can't just do one species as much as I want to. I would love to be able to whittle things down and have more adult pairs of Jansenii to really crack the code on them and figure it out. But at the same time,
Right.
I also really enjoy my Bairds. And
yeah,
the one Brettles python I have floating around in my room that just hangs out, and there's too much stuff, too much cool stuff.
Yep, for sure.
A lot of variety out there.
Yeah, 100%. You gotta, like, I always pitch it. Diversity is key. You're gonna learn so much.
Yes.
I think that's the best way to get it, like, the most enjoyment out of this hobby is just like trying new things and learning from it. Because every species, every individual within that species is gonna be a little bit different, and you're gonna have a new challenge.
But you're going to take something away from each one of those.
Exactly.
Like, the things I learned from chondros, like, there's things I've learned from those that I can apply to colubrids. There's things I learned from the Jansenii and dealing with imports and what to expect with that I can apply to green trees. Like, overall, I think having the diversity like that just makes your overall experience and it makes you a more well-rounded keeper in general.
Yeah.
You couple that with like books. I keep buying books. I don't know why. Like, I don't know when I'm going to actually get around to reading them, because I'm horrible about picking up and finishing books. But I have like a stack of freaking 20 of these things on my dresser right now, and I just keep adding stuff to it. Like, I need another bookshelf. I'm at a point where I've got so many hurt books. It's ridiculous, but it's like
I need to get some more, but like I don't know what I want. And I don't want to say like I wouldn't be interested in like a boa book, but like I'm not that interested in boas, so I don't even think, like, even just having it for shits and giggles to build a reptile library, like, I don't think that would be worth it, because I just don't think I'd care as much about it.
Well, it depends too on like the price. So like that Boas of the West Indies book that I just picked up that came out last year. Like, I was watching them do that Leonis episode the other night, and I was just scrolling through Amazon, and I was like, that book's $14. It's like 75% off. That book was originally like $70. I'm like, why is it 14? Like, that can't be right. I went ahead and ordered it because I was like, the only Chilobothris I really have a super vested interest in is Jamaican boas. So it's like, I don't know why. Like, there's a lot of this book I'm probably not going to have any real need for. Like, I'm still going to read the whole thing because it's still interesting, and that whole group is still interesting to me, even if it's not something I'm super invested in. But like, if the price is right, like Hamilton book, we talk about that a lot. You get a lot of cheap old, like out of print Krieger books for like next to nothing on there. And so I'll go on there periodically and just grab some. Like, I got a random book that's like Snakes of Southeast Asia, and it's literally just pictures of the snakes of Southeast Asia. Like, there's very little text in it, and it's like, I have it just to have it. It's like I'll load it up. But then there's been a lot of times where I've gotten books and I've gotten it for just a specific section. So like the Sandboa book I just picked up a couple of weeks ago, I got that just for the section on Conicus, because I was like, I want more information. Like, Kenyan Sandboas, they're cool and all. I've kept a handful of them over the years, like whatever, but I want the information on Conicus in there. And like, I'm willing to pay the $45 for that, even if it's 6 pages, as stupid as that sounds. But I ended up reading the whole thing, and it's like, it was cool. It was good. You learn things from the Kenyans and the East African stuff as far as like breeding and litter sizes and temperatures and things like that. That's still applicable to the Conicus. And then the same with the Subok book. Like, I bought the complete Subok, having zero interest in Suboks. I got them mixed up with Texas rat snakes for the longest time.
Yeah.
Because I got it because I had a Baird eye chapter in it. Like,
again,
like an 8-10 page section on Baird. So I was like, I'm going to buy that book because I want that section.
I kind of want even for like shits and giggles. Like, I want the more complete chondro, because like I'm just interested. Like, I'd read that. I'd read, the carpet one too. Like, I've been liking carpets recently. Like, I think they're cool. Definitely of interest. I've been listening to NPR a little bit more lately. Because I just find interest in it. What book I would really, really like is Klaus's book, but like I've
Yeah.
looked and they're like the ones I see that you can get and they look like they're on some sketchy ass website are
It's
like
the
hundreds of dollars.
Abe Books thing, I think
I
is what
don't even
Abe
know.
Books. I bought it. I got it, and it's legit.
You
I
have
got it.
it?
I got it from that same website, and it's legit. Shipping was like an
All
extra,
right.
I think, like $26. It wasn't anything crazy.
All right. Maybe I'll have to we'll talk about it afterwards. I might have to.
Because I thought the
Was
same
it like a
thing.
few $100 though?
It was like 100 at the
Was
time.
it?
Yeah,
Oh shit.
because it was like
I need to
one
get
store
that.
in Sweden had it or something. And that was the only site I could find it on. And it came and it was supposed to be used, and it was like mint. Like there was nothing wrong with that book.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I definitely need to do some looking around because that's something I've heard Matt talk about it like
Yeah.
and with myself liking Asian rat snakes, it's something I need to have, I feel
Yeah.
like.
And that's the problem, man, is like there's so many books on my Amazon wish list, but they're, $150, $200. Like, and it's like eventually I will get them, but it's in time. All the really good ones I want. There's a book on coral snakes I really want that's like 186.
Really?
Yeah. Kills me. Snake Bites from Non-Venomous Snakes is a very good one. I still need to get the second edition, and that one's actually on sale right now. So if you're gonna get it, grab it. The Subok book, that's one I can't recommend enough either. Like, I had no interest in Subocs, but by the time I finished it, I had 2 Subocs in my collection. Like they're so cool. Like the ecology of them, man, it's awesome. And there's a section on like
They're definitely interesting.
they're a blast. They're great snakes. I don't have any currently, but they were. I really enjoyed them. They're just so stupid looking. They're great.
How'd they do for you? Because I know we had that conversation in the group chat about the green rat snakes. And I know Subocs kind of take, they kind of come from that same general-ish range where it's a little bit drier and stuff. And I know, I don't know how humid it is by you.
I didn't have an issue there. I just gave them smaller water bowls. Like,
okay,
they'd be in like a 32 quart tub on Aspen, and instead of having like sort of the typical deli cup, like largish deli cup, they just had like a little, what the hell are they called? Like the little sauce dish kind of things.
gotcha. Okay,
I forget the name of them. It starts with an M, I think, but got them at Dollar Tree, and they were great. So
okay,
but I didn't have any issues with them here. Never really had any shedding issues. Ventilation is a big thing with those, though. You really want to make sure
gotcha.
you got a lot of ventilation going on because they don't seem to deal with stagnant air very well.
Okay,
But yeah, I never had a problem. They ate every time. Kind of like the rhinos, like super curious, like always. You're in the room, they're checking you out and watching what's going on, and they were awesome. I really enjoyed them. I just got to the point where I was like, had to downsize, and it was like projects that I really want to stick with versus the stuff that I really like and also want to stick with, just not as bad. So
right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The never ending battle.
Yeah. Of what to keep and what not. Yeah.
Yeah. The list of stuff you want is always going to be way bigger than your room.
Oh yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. We had a really good conversation. We've been going for about an hour and 50 minutes. Got any final thoughts? Anything else you want to say to anyone who's listening?
Get rhinos, they'll change your life.
Yeah,
I'm
rhinos
gonna
are
like
pretty freaking cool.
Be a freaking Jehovah's Witness going door to door about rhinos, dude. I can't get enough of those freaking snakes.
Yeah. I feel ya. Guys, if you want to go check Justin out on social media at Palmetto Coast Exotics and at Fulvius Apparel. I know you're doing a deal right now on shirts.
Yeah.
It's BOGO, right?
Buy one, get one 50% off. Shirts, mugs, all that good stuff. That's going on now until I set it for like
May 11th
on the 11th. Yeah. So
nice.
Got a couple weeks to take advantage of it.
Yep. All right, man. Awesome. Well, yeah, I guess it's been a good time, guys, as usual.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Feel free to give me a follow on all my social media down below. I'm not going to kick Justin out for the outro. I usually do that, but he gets to stay.
Hey,
um, what else? Check out my Morph Market. Give me a follow there. Follow Instagram. Make sure you like and subscribe, by the way. As always, I check the analytics. 30% of you don't subscribe. What's up with that? Hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Also, again, you can listen to these podcasts on all the major podcasting platforms now. This will go get uploaded right away to Apple Music or Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that stuff. So go check it out on there. Let's see. I have Meteoric Serpents t-shirts available if you're interested. And last but not least, the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. That's the first link in the description. You can check that out if you want to give me some more support. We're gonna build a community there and yeah, just have a lot of fun. As always, guys, this was the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. This was episode number 24, just a little Sunday hangout, and thank you again so much, Justin, for joining us. But
I
I
feel
hope you
corrupted.
yeah, hell yeah. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your night and a great week coming up. Make sure you stay tuned because we have a really, really cool guest coming on next week, and I'm super excited for it. So stay tuned. Peace out.